guys, welcome back. Today we are gonna, I feel like my hair is out of place. I feel like it's sticking straight up, but I think it's one of the plants behind me. Anyway, today we are going to plant up some of the Plumeria cuttings. I know that I said in the fall, as I waved this to you, that I was going to do the baggie method, where you kind of fill a baggie with soil, damp soil, and then you put it up around the plant and then just tie elastic around it so that the roots can develop during its kind of dormancy period. Well, I didn't get around to it. I had other things on the go, and procrastination. So anyway, we're here in February. It is middle of February, getting closer to March. So the weather should be starting to cooperate with us, and soon enough we will be able to put these outside. So with Plumerias, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to break their dormancy. So you want to make sure that you give them enough time to start producing leaves. So in this period, we are going to give them some moist soil, not soaking wet, because you will probably rot these guys out. They like to be on the dry side. So some moist soil, you want to, or pre-moistened soil is what I'm going to use. Well-draining soil, because you don't want it to stay wet for too long. And yeah, we're going to start off. I believe it is 6-inch pots, but hard to tell. I don't know. It's best to use an 8-inch pot if you can. And I believe it's a 6-inch. Best to use an 8-inch pot. I'm going to start them in this, and then later on in the season, I will either sink this pot into the ground, or I will transplant it into a bigger pot. You want to be careful with Plumeria roots, because they are slow to produce roots, and the root system that they do have is quite delicate. So if you just notice that there is a root starting to develop, don't move it around. Don't try to pull it out to see how it's doing. Because if you break that root, it's going to take some time before it develops another one. And it might not even develop another one. You never know. Root systems on Plumerias are a little bit more delicate than other plants. So just keep that in mind. So anyway, if you notice that your cuttings are really shriveled, these ones are not so bad. But if you do notice that your cuttings are quite shriveled, you can always soak them in the sink for about 20 minutes, maybe up to an hour, prior to planting, just so that it sucks up the moisture that it needs, and it kind of gets it plumped and ready to go. But in this situation, I'm not even going to bother. They're not terribly shriveled, so we should be okay. I feel like there's a spider crawling up my leg. That's kind of gross. So anyway, enough chatting about this. Let's look at the soil. I have in this container, it is a regular, this is a seedling mix, or a seed starting mix. I've been using this all season because I really want to get rid of it. So I'm going to be using this. This has a lot of perlite in it, and there's peat moss in it. The problem with using a high peat soil is it retains a lot of moisture. So with these guys, because they would prefer not to have a lot of moisture just hanging out, you need to add some drainage. So with that, you can add some perlite. I'm going to add some orchid bark because I have it, and I don't really like this one for the orchids. I don't like this one for my orchids because it is more like wood chips rather than chunks, and I feel like I'm just throwing soil into my orchids, and they don't like that so much. So anyway, I'm going to use this. There's perlite in there, there's charcoal in there, there's all kinds of good drainage things. I just don't want to use it for my orchids. And also, it gets all over my fingers, and it's really messy. So this one is going to go in with the soil. This will add drainage. This will add drainage to the soil. It'll be all good. Another thing that you can also use a cactus soil. Cactus soil works really well. You just want something that drains freely. So if you water it and you notice that it pools and it takes a really long time to go through, that's probably not the mix you want to use. You want to use a mix that when you put water in it, it can pool for a second, but then drains right through. Lots of things you can use to make that particular mix. Another thing, there it is. I've got my slow release fertilizer. This is my friend over the summer months because I don't know. I don't want to have to worry about whether I fertilized enough. I'm going to put this stuff in all of my plants that go outside, and with the exception of a few. Orchids don't do well with the slow release fertilizer. Excuse me, God, I got some dust in my throat. So I'm going to throw a bunch of this slow release fertilizer into the soil mix. Let me bring the camera down, because at this point everything is going to be down below. Okay, so I got my slow release fertilizer. Let's just sprinkle that in there. It's not something specific. This is just a it's called Magic Grow hanging basket. It's got 11, 20, 11. So this is going to really work on flower production for the plant. So that's all right. I don't really care if there's flower production. Well, I do for a Plumeria. Hello, what am I talking about? But in general, I don't really care. I just want nutrients available to the plant. I'm going to be fertilizing with a liquid fertilizer throughout the season, so that is going to take most of the fertilizing power for the plant. This is just that added kick. So I'm just being generous with it. I'm not going to use all of this soil, I'm sure, for these plants, but I'm just mixing it up. Pre-mixing, can't go wrong with that. Make sure it's all well combined. You can see that there is the bark in there, and you can see the perlite from the other seed mix. So this is a decent mix, and again, it's pre-moistened. When I'm dealing with Plumerias, I want to make sure that it's pre-moistened. I'm not going to water it right after I plant. So that is the soil. Let's move that off to the side just a little bit. I've got my pots here that I'm going to be putting my piece of paper towel to stop any grossness from coming out the bottom. And I'm just going to add some soil to the bottom of the pots. This scoop is really handy. I love it. I know that I've talked about it before. This is the Elo scoop, I guess, is all that it's called. Soil scoop. It's got the holes in the bottom, so it's good to, if it's a wet soil, it gets rid of the water. Anyway, I don't really have wet soil. I don't know why that's a feature for me. So then we're going to take our Plumeria cuttings. Perhaps I should lower the camera and show you what we're doing sort of at level, because it might help you out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to try to get the plant almost, or the cutting almost to the bottom of this particular pot. You want to try to use a deep pot for Plumerias, because you're going to want to try to get, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches of the cutting in the soil. So we're going to just stick it in there like so, just ever so lovingly. And we're just going to fill it with some of our soil mix. You want to firm the soil in around the plant. You don't want it like concrete, but you want it nice and firm so your plant can stand up on its own. There we go. You want to try to get it as much in the center as you can. Also, take into consideration if you have branching, where that branching is. So this particular cutting, it might be better if it's just offset a little bit, because see how the branching is here? The branching, you want it to kind of look right. If it's standing straight up and then the branching is all over this way, it'll look kind of silly. So this one here, I like the way that it's sitting. We've got about 6 to 8 inches of the Plumeria stem covered. It's going to give lots of space for the roots to develop, and hopefully this one will grow strong. So let's do the other one, and then we'll talk about where we're going to place these. So I'm just going to stick it in there. This one has a slight bend to it, so I'm going to stick it off to one side of the pot just a little bit, and just so that it looks like it's standing straight up. We're going to get some of this soil. Toss that in there. I'd love to see photos of your Plumerias. Right now they should be starting to break dormancy. A lot of you are starting to grow seedlings, so I'd love to see how your seedlings are doing. I've shown you mine. Now show me yours. So inappropriate. And then we are going to finish this off here. If you need to use a stick to support it, by all means, it's your plant. Most times it won't need any support, but and if you see any flower inflows starting to grow before the roots develop, you want to remove the flower spike, because if it starts to produce a flower spike or an inflow and it hasn't developed roots, chances are it's going to put its focus towards the flower rather than the root structure. And realistically, right now, you need roots in order to support the plant long term. If you let the flower spike grow and continue to flourish and bloom, chances are your plant will not survive because it's using so much energy to flower. So keep that in mind. It's tragic, I know, but sometimes it needs to be done. I'm noticing here, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see it, but there's a little bit of a cone starting on this one, so I believe that this one is going to be growing a flower spike. So I'll keep my eyes on that. So let me pull the camera away, and we're just going to talk about what we're going to be doing with these now. Okay, so now that these are all repotted, I'm going to keep these in a warm location. You want to keep them nice and toasty warm. Anywhere from between, I don't know, let's say, I'm going to say in Celsius, 21 to 25 degrees Celsius, or in Fahrenheit, I don't know, 72 to perhaps 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and keep them. You don't necessarily have to keep them in light until the leaves start to develop, but if you have a nice bright window, it's going to get warmth from that. So it's a good place if you have it, but it's not 100% necessary. Just keep them nice and warm. If you have bottom heat, if you have heat mat or something like that, put it on low, and just to have it warm the pot. But if you don't have that, that's alright. I don't really do it myself. It just helps it and maybe speeds it up a little bit. You want to give it water when it becomes dry. You don't want to water it on a schedule, because if it's not developing roots and it's not actively growing, it's not pulling up the water the way that it should. So if you continuously water it and it doesn't need it, it will probably rot your plant. Not 100%, but more than likely. These are very prone to rotting. So we covered keep them warm, water them only when they become dry, and when you start to see leaves developing, when they start to really poke through, these ones are going to be starting very, very soon. You can start to see them elongating just a little bit. They're not really tight anymore. They're starting to look like they're kind of poking up a little bit. So this one won't take long. This one is a little bit tighter, but I believe that it's going to start to flower. So once you see the leaves start to develop, you want to give it as much light as you can. And then when the weather starts to get nicer outside, whenever you can, whenever it's above 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, put it outside, let it adjust to the new light levels outside, and then bring it in at night when it's going to get cold. Anything below 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit is not good for these guys. They do not like it, and you could maybe set them back in their growth. So keep that in mind as well. But the sooner you can start to acclimatize them to the light levels outside, the better your plant is going to adjust later on when it's out there full time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, show me your plumerias. Tag me on Instagram, on PlantzNThings, as well as on the Facebook PlantzNThings What's Growing, and the regular PlantzNThings page. Also on Twitter if you'd like. I'm not on there as much, but I do stop in from time to time. Anyway, until next time, happy growing, everyone. This one is a really slow grower, like I said. I've had this one for about 3 or 4 years, and this is all the growth that I have. It started off with just one stem, this one here, this big